I'm building a roof rack for my Toyota 4Runner, and in order to give me the best side lighting I could possibly find without spending thousands of dollars on any of the name brands, I wanted to find out which Amazon light was going to give me the best bang for the buck or best illumination per dollar spent. I ended up buying every 6 and 7-inch flush mounted LED light bar Amazon had to offer, and I'm going to test them all out and then review them on here so that if anybody is curious about this as well, they will hopefully have an idea as to what they want to buy and for what purposes. Starting it off, we have the Adzune here. Then we go to the YCHOW. Next is Raycharm. After that, we've got YCHOW, Bunker Industries, Swatow Industries, and Nilight. As a control, I have also included a Nilight 2x3-inch pod. It's what I've seen a lot of people put in their bumpers, and I figured would be a very good comparison as to what your average backup light or floodlight would kind of give you. I'm hoping this helps somebody out who's curious, same as I was, as what a good flush-mounted floodlight is going to get you. Here I've got them all flipped over to kind of give you an idea as to what you're going to get. Keep in mind, all of these, except for the Bunker Industries, comes with a mounting surface, gasket, and hardware to do it. The Bunker Industries only comes with hardware. All of them are a rubber or a closed cell foam gasket, except for the Nilight, which has a neoprene gasket. Pretty dope. That being said, the Adzune and the YCHOW are very similar construction. The only difference that I can tell is the YCHOW seems to have a breather, but otherwise very similar wire gauge, very similar fin design, all of it. You can see the breather is right here. Similar sized wiring on both of them. We hop over to the Raycharm. It has a very large breather and a nice cable gland that looks to be weather tight here. Also has copper wiring on it, which is fantastic. Jumping over to the YCHOW, definitely smaller fins. Again, a powder coated textured surface. Looks to be pretty decent. No breather to speak of. We hop over to the Bunker Industries. Looks to have smaller wiring that is sealed by RTV, it looks like, and a plastic very thin housing with what I would consider minimal fins compared to everything else here. Moving over, we have the Swatow Industries, which has a bunch of fins all over it in a different design than anything else on this except for the Nilight has. It also has a very small breather there. Overall, looks to be very similar. Looks like it'll have good heat dissipation. The Nilight has a smaller rear footprint than anything else, but a ton more heat sink, as it also has more fin depth here than anybody else. And the only thing that really kind of comes close to it is the Swatow Industries. Also has a nice breather there, nice bolted together construction, so you might be able to take it apart and seal it if you had any issues. Overall, looks pretty darn good. I think a lot of these lights are actually, for the price you're paying, between $20 and $40, are very well constructed. This is the Adzune light bar. It is pulling 1.05 amps at 14.1 volts. It is doing 29.2 lux at 25 feet. This has a very even color fill and light dispersion throughout the entire range. It is quite a wide throwing light. It's going about 25 feet up in the air, and it's doing about 30, maybe 35 feet to the sides in overall total width. And good fill from the foreground all the way up to the ceiling. Very much a bright white at about 6,000 K. It has a very good flood pattern. This is the YCHOW. It is pulling 8.2 amps at 14.1 volts, at a distance of 25 feet. It is putting out 79.1 lux. It has very much a focused beam pattern right there in the center hotspot with a decent amount of spill. It's throwing light about 20-25 feet up and about the same to the sides. There is decent fill throughout the entire range of the light, but the hotspot is definitely focused. This is the Raycharm. It is pulling 1.71 amps at 14.1 volts. It is doing 43.5 lux at 25 feet. This is the warmest light of all of them that I've tested. It is probably closer to 5500K instead of the 6000K. Has more yellow in the light. It has incredible width. If I had more room, it'd probably be about 40 feet in overall total width. And then it does about 20, maybe 22 feet up the wall. It has good color fill and great definition throughout it. It is also a very good floodlight, especially if you're looking for something a little less bright or brilliant white, like most LEDs are, and closer to a halogen without actually being a halogen. This is the YCHOW-TECH. It is doing 0.54 of an amp at 14.1 volts. It is doing 15.1 lux at 25 feet. It has a more defined hotspot, as you can see in the video. It has decent width on it, about 20, maybe 25 feet at 25 feet of distance. And it'll do about 22, 25 feet up the wall. There's just less light output in this light, and it is very much a bright, probably a 62, 6300K light. This is the Bunker Industries light. It is pulling 0.38 of an amp at 14.1 volts. It is doing 7.4 lux at 25 feet. This has a very interesting light pattern because you can definitely see the different chipsets on the wall, because you'll have more yellow and more blue chipsets that shine in weird patterns. It has, for the amount of amp it's pulling, it has very wide characteristics, probably close to 30 feet, maybe 35 feet at the 25-foot distance, and it goes up to about 22, 25 feet up on the wall. However, there is just not as much light output from this as other ones. Given its thin size though, it actually does a pretty decent job. So if you need a very thin light, this would do it for you. Swatow Industries. It is doing 1.87 amps at 14.1 volts. It is doing 156.8 lux at 25 feet. It has a width of about 25 feet at a distance of about 25 feet. The main light beam goes up to about 15 feet with some spill up to about 20. It is very much focused in that center hotspot area, and this performs less like a floodlight and more like a combo or a spot beam because it has some spill and some height, but very much focused in the center. Very little foreground as well. This is the Nilight. It is producing 13.9 lux at 25 feet. It's pulling 1.48 amps at 14.1 volts. It's producing about a 6000K color temperature light. It is very bright white. It has good fill and definition throughout the entire beam pattern. It has a very wide width of probably 35 to 40 feet at 25 feet, and has great height as well, as it fills all the way up the garage door and back onto the ceiling about 10 feet. Fills it in very nicely, does great for a floodlight, just doesn't have quite as much punch as some of these other lights. Nilight Control 2x3 pod. It's pulling 0.69 of an amp at 14.1 volts, 15.5 lux at 25 feet, about 30 to 35 feet of width, at 25 feet and every bit of 25 feet of height. It's even backfilling with light on the ceiling more than any other pod has, or flush mounted light bar. It has great color fill, and it looks to be about a 6200K light. Sorry about the noise. I've got my Forerunner running during these tests so that I can keep it at a consistent 14.1 volts. I've also got my lux meter set up at about 55 feet is what I pasted off to. So everything I'm doing is based off 14.1 volts and then a distance of 55 feet roughly, so you can get good fill throughout what you're trying to floodlight up and hopefully help others as well as myself make an informed decision as to what you want out of a floodlight and which one's best for your needs. This is the Adzune. We are 4.9 lux at that roughly 55 feet. But where this thing really shines, pun intended, is it has a ton of foreground and a ton more width than the YCHOW previously, and some incredible brilliance throughout the first probably 25 to 30 feet. It is just very much lit up, as you can see in the video here. This is the YCHOW. I'm about 7 lux at 55 feet. I've got roughly 45 feet worth of width at that same 55 feet and good color fill throughout it at about a 6000K color temperature. This is the Raycharm. It is doing 6.8 lux at that 55 feet. It is probably about 100 feet, maybe 125 feet of width at both 25 feet as well as that 55 foot distance. It is wider than my camera can pick up, and it is very foreground heavy, but evens that out all the way to that about 55 foot range before it kind of starts dropping off. Overall, great color fill, great light, very usable, especially for a floodlight. This is the YCHOW. It is doing 2.2 lux at that 55 foot range. It has some foreground heaviness here right up close to the light, and then it has some decent fill throughout it, getting to about maybe 50 feet of width at that 55 foot of distance. The color fill is okay. The coverage in between where the light is and that 55 feet is okay. It is not my optimal choice, but it is a decent light. This is the Bunker Industries. It is doing 1 lux at that 55 feet. It is actually quite wide for what it is. However, you can see the difference in color bands where it goes very bluish white, 6000K to about a 5000K, and it stair steps down to that 40-50 foot range. Basically, you can still see the colors, temperatures of the different LED chips it uses. It is just not nearly as bright as other options. It is very foreground heavy, and that's about all it has going for it. And you couple that with the build quality, it's just not optimal for what it is, especially given there are better performers in the same price category. Swatow Industries. It is doing 30 lux at 55 feet. It has a decent amount of foreground from about the 0 to 10 foot mark, and it is very much a 6000, maybe even a 6500K white light. The gully in between the 10 foot mark and probably the 40 foot mark is mediocrely illuminated, but that rectangle at 55 feet is probably about 40 feet, probably maximum wide, but boy is it lighting that up incredibly. There is a ton of definition. There is a ton of distance to it as well. It is much more of a combo pattern than a flood pattern. This is the Nilight. It is doing 2.1 lux at 55 feet. As you can see on screen, it has a very definitive flood beam pattern that gets to probably 65, maybe 70 feet of width, and great 6500K color fill in that from there to about 40-45 feet where it starts diminishing off. But it is very much a flood beam pattern that does exactly what it is supposed to do, with some color throw and light throw up to probably 35 or 40 feet, more so than the camera can pick up, but it is very dim. But again, it's a floodlight. It is absolutely flooding the area with light, and the foreground is wonderful. This is my Control Nilight 2x3 pod. It is doing 2.3 lux at 55 feet. It is very similar to the flush mounted Nilight, just a narrower beam pattern, and that's probably due to the construction of it. It has about a 65 foot width at that 55 feet. It throws light up into the trees about 35 feet and has good color fill in the foreground all the way up to about 55 feet, going a little farther than the Nilight flush mounted, but overall it has good 6500K color temperature. My results. In first place, I have the Raycharm, simply because of its incredible width and its warmer color temperature at about a 6000K as opposed to 6500K for most of the other lights in this. Second place was the Adzun. This was very surprising to me because I did not expect it to perform as well as it did. It had great width and great color fill and definition all the way out to about that 60-foot mark where you want a floodlight to diminish. I was absolutely blown away with how well it did. Third place, simply due to its intensity, was the Swatow Industries, because if you are looking for a combo pattern or more of a spot beam, it is incredible by far. However, in a flush mount, you more than likely want more of a floodlight than a combo or a spot beam, so take that for what it's worth. The other four lights in the Shootout have areas they shine and areas they don't. The only one I really can't speak much to is the Bunker Industries, as it is poorly made and the light output is poor. All the rest of them have some redeeming qualities. Hope this helps somebody. I know I was curious about it, and I'm absolutely thrilled with what I have chosen.